Hey there, and welcome. So, Side Effects is holding a new Houdini art challenge called Mardini, which is starting on the 1st of March. The idea of it is to create an artwork in Houdini based on a daily prompt. That prompt is basically just a theme to base your artwork around. It's open to anyone who would like to enter, and if you do enter, it doesn't have to be every day. Last year, there were prizes for Best Daily, Best Weekly, Best Collection, Best Overall Artwork, and for entering every day. So, as you may know, I won Best Collection in last year's Who Lie Art Challenge, and I've decided to do a daily review video for each day's entries. I'm going to be talking about the winning entries, what makes them so good, and then I'm also going to be talking about some of the other entries. I'll go over what I like about them, what I think could maybe be changed, and how they could have been winning entries in my opinion. So if you'd like me to review your entry, feel free to tag me on Instagram at 9_between. So with all of that comes a bit of a disclaimer. Everything that I'm saying here is my own opinion. It doesn't make it right or wrong. I'm just trying to give a critique that the artist can work from and hopefully something that you can learn from as well. I'm not trying to make fun of or insult or belittle any of the artists. I'm merely just trying to give some feedback in an entertaining way. So let's get straight into it. In third place in the images category for day 29 wind, we have this entry by Nico Klein. And they've gone for this dog sticking his head out of the window. And his tongue is dangling out of his mouth as it's driving by. Now, there's a couple of things that I really appreciate about this. Firstly, they've chosen to show wind in a very interesting way, right? Generally, you would think of turbulence or cloth, or something along those lines. But Nico went for something that's unique. It went for this dog sticking its head out of the window. And you can see that there's all of this sort of pulling that the wind would do, right? The cheek of his dog is being pulled to the side over here. Same thing with the fur around the eyes. Over here, there's a cheek pulling back. The ears are pushed back. All of this fur towards the back over here. They really get the idea of force coming in from the side. And that's splendid. It's a great touch. Now, as for the actual dog, they did an incredible job with the amount of time that they had, right? This is decently modeled. Of course, it doesn't have a body. It probably just ends over there. But what is modeled is decent, right? This nose looks good. There's nothing blaringly wrong with this. They even have some variation in the eye, right? The pupil or the center of the eye is darker than the outside. There's the sort of light brown over there with the black in the middle. You can see that there's the pink in the ears, the pink in the mouth. There's a bit of a taper off of the texture over here. Has teeth and everything, right? It's really well fleshed out. The only thing that I would say is that the fur seems a little bit too clustered. And this might just be a guide groom thing. So when you're doing fur, there's generally a guide groom. Then off of that guide groom, you have hair gen, and each one follows the shape of that guide curve. So if you don't have enough guide curves, then your hair just looks kind of segmented, right? And I think that might be the issue here, but it's really not a major issue. I do think that this is a great entry. They did a lot with the time that they had. They also made sure that the car isn't too heavily in focus in the shot, because obviously this isn't a fully modeled car. It's probably just a little box with a hole cut out. They also did a great job with the HDRI to flesh out the environment. So overall, great entry by Nico Klein. In second place, we have this entry by Oscar. And they've gone for this character, or not even the character. They've gone for the elements that are actually affected by the wind, right? So they have this dress being blown in the wind over here, the umbrella, and the hair. This is spectacular for a couple of particular reasons. So the one thing that I think is so cool about this is that they've gotten across the idea of form without actually having the character. You can almost in your mind fill in the missing geometry over here, and it still makes perfect sense, right? And so they've sort of removed the elements that aren't important to the scene and focused on the elements that are. As for the actual cloth, this cloth over here looks great. It wraps around the geometry quite well. They have a seam over here, as you would in an actual dress. There's a bit of curling up on the edges over there. They have this fold over here, and there's lots of minor detail, which looks great. It's also got this sort of satin finish, which catches the light in a very interesting way. On the umbrella, you can see that it is attached over here to the ridges, and that once again creates some great shape. The hair over here looks good. There is a bit of motion blur and everything. And then finally, the minor details. The ground over here, the ground is awesome. The background seems to be just an image. And then they have these pieces of paper flying around. There's loads of detail. They've ensured that there's motion blur even in the still so that you get a good idea of movement, good lighting, just everything about it is wonderful. So yeah, lovely entry by Oscar. And in first place, we have this entry by Jason Harmon. And they've gone for this very simplified character. It sort of reminds me of a Wallace and Gromit character or something, maybe a bit modernized. And so if you take a look at the detail in this character, before I even get into the conceptual side or the wind element, I'd like to just focus on the great texturing here. All of the geometry is brilliant. Right? They have good texturing on the scarf. It looks like a woven scarf with a woven beanie. They have this knitted jersey as well as this denim texture on the jeans. The jeans are folded up. This is the kind of detail that you don't really see in amateur entries, and so this really goes to show that there is a great attention to detail. The boots have multiple levels of detail to them. The actual boot with this white line that runs around, as well as the sole. Even the sole is that brown color. Awesome. The character, there's a lot of personality over here. The one eye closed, the one eye sort of squinted, and the mouth is simplified down to just a curve. So in terms of art style, attention to detail, color, lighting, and feel, I think that this is brilliant. Can't fault it in any way. Now moving on to the actual dynamics that they have. They have a smokesome, but they don't just have a very generalized smokesome where it looks like steam. They've made sure to make it look like a blizzard, like it's something cold. And they do this by adding these little particles of what would be snow into the atmosphere. You also get the idea across because of how the character is dressed. But there's a great level of detail in here, right? Once again, you have awesome detail in this snow over here blowing in. That's a great volume that they have. So yeah, this is a spectacular entry by Jason Harmon. I can't fault this one. I think it's really great. In third place in the animation category, we have this entry by VFX Man 222. And this is such a good entry. I don't actually really have anything bad to say about it, so I'll go through all of the things that I like about it. Firstly, the lighting, right? This is great. Looks like a pleasant afternoon. There's a clear sky. They have a single light source you can see over here, which is casting one shadow, which is great. Good variation in the grass over here. Shallow depth of field towards the foreground. They start with an establishing shot that doesn't really give you an idea of what's going on, and you just see the fence and the grass. That's another thing. Technically, it's very impressive that they made this fence. I assume this is procedurally generated and it looks awesome. It looks very realistic. They've got great shape, great scale. Everything about that is brilliant. Now, you can see that there's a lot of wind blowing around initially, and it catches onto this grass really nicely. It's also affecting the fence in a larger scale, right? You don't have each one of these links being affected. It's more of a large scale noise. And I'm interested to know how they did that. The way that I would probably do it is either with a large scale noise in a VOP, or if you actually want to use dynamics, you make a grid, which is vellum, and then you use cloth deform to deform the fence. And so I think either of those options could work in this case. But then the main element of interest, leaves blowing in onto the scene, right? So they come from off the screen and they come blowing in and add a lot of interest to the shot. So that's some great curvature that they have going on there. I'm not sure if this is just a particle system or if there's actual vellum going on, but either way, it looks awesome. So yeah, I love this entry from VFX Man 222. Definitely deserving of a top 3 entry. In second place, we have this entry by Carl Drifter. Right, so they have this setting over here. It feels very Mediterranean. You know, they have these arches opening over here, light pouring into what seems like a villa or whatever this may be. They've stuck to a great color scheme by just keeping the white and the white tiles, white pillars, and they've really fleshed out the scene. You can see over here that it extends this way, and there's great detail in the background over there. They have this door in the background as well, shallow depth of field with a focal shift. It starts out of focus, shifts into focus. they have these petals blowing through the environment, and then they have this cloth, which might have been like the curtain or just a random cloth that comes in. Now they have this pedestal in the center, so your focal point generally lies over here. That allows them to do this over here, where it catches on an invisible collider and they switch in this Houdini logo. Now everything about this is near perfect. My only critique is that this Houdini logo feels slightly out of place. I think it would be nice if it was maybe marble or a similar texture to the environment. It looks a bit metallic and it has very sharp edges. I think if it was just slightly adjusted, had a bit of a texture on it, then this would be pretty much a perfect shot. So yeah, I think that this is beautiful, but I do think that there's slight room for improvement on the actual Houdini logo. Either way, once again, Carl Drifter really killing it, so great stuff. In first place, we have this entry by Resilient Picture Company. It's awesome. It's a fairly short shot. It's only about 5 seconds, but they get a lot done in that time. So you can see that initially they have this pig in the wind tunnel, whatever it may be, and there's good soft body movement, right? Whatever this is done with fem or vellum, whatever it may be, looks awesome. There's a good level of deformation, but it doesn't feel unrealistic. It feels very fleshy, kind of rubbery. So that's great. This over here is revealed to just be a reflection, which I think is a pretty interesting touch, because this way you establish a subject, you establish it as the sort of middle ground because you have a background over there, but then you come out to this area and this becomes your foreground. Now you have a foreground, middle ground, and background. It adds some extra interest to the shot. So yeah, it just adds that little element of extra interest over and above the movement of the pig. Now, as for the actual movement in the fur, this looks great. They have different length fur, which I always think is cool. There's some good variation over here, and they've done it in an interesting way, right? It's this gray hair that makes the pig look kind of aged, but it looks so good when it's blowing in the wind. It's a pretty realistic simulation, so I love this entry. I can't really fault it. I think that it's a lot of fun to look at, and it's great dynamics. So technically impressive and visually impressive. 2 more days.
Is he a good boy? Why are you hugging him?
Yeah, Tom Knoll's entry is pretty sick. Like, having it up on this cliff over here with the clouds down below, some wind turbines, looks pretty good. I will admit, when you open it, you start to notice that there's some detail missing, but at this scale, it looks so good. It looks kind of realistic. Really like that one. This entry from AB is another cool concept, and this looks so good in real life. I know it's tough in like a daily challenge, but the few things that I would say is the simulation needs to be slightly higher resolution, and then maybe even drive a particle system with some advection using the Pyro sim. So you use that smoke simulation, you take the velocity, you drive some particles, and then you maybe increase the density of the actual smoke. Then you have particles and you have the smoke or the mist or whatever it is. And then the actual mountain, just add like some bump to it, just that it doesn't look, low poly. Because I think a lot of people try to get too much detail with just geometry, and a lot of detail actually comes from displacement and bump and things like that. So yeah, I think just those 2 minor things would be awesome, and then I would even say increase the brightness over here and then do some glow. So let's go take a look at some pictures of wind on top of mountains. Let's see. I can't actually find any decent images. I'll let you in on a secret. Google has a lot of like copyright laws in place so that they can't really display many images. But if you go to another search engine like Bing or Yandex, yeah, gasp, right? Go to Bing. But if you use one of the others, you can find images that are like under copyright, but it's really good for finding inspiration. So yeah, like check these results. It's great. Ooh, that's dramatic. That's pretty cool. So this would be pretty high resolution smoke, but you can add noise in your Pyro shader and get similar sort of detail over there. And this is also why I would say use particles, because you can make particles do the sort of like streak thing, and then you mix it with Pyro and then it looks really good. Hey, this shot looks so sick, actually. Wow. I kind of want to do something like this in 3D. So like that's one idea. Here's another one. This is like less detailed. But yeah, that's basically it. Just more detail in that would be really nice, especially considering it is the main focus. Oh, this is so nice from Cohort. Cohorte. Actually, they said in the YouTube comments there's no wrong way to pronounce it. So it's now Cohorte. So it's pretty cool having the words break apart off the page. I would say the lighting is maybe a little bit flat over here. I think it could be really nice to just hit it with a bit more of a light that can even catch the edges of these particles over here. Edge lighting on particles is a mission though. So I understand any sort of hesitation on that. What does this say? This is so good. It's like actually took time to write out a bunch of stuff. I wish I could read all of it. It's like really small and difficult to tell. But Mardini is over, and then I mean it's almost over. Hi, how are you? I reply. Maybe this is like a secret. Maybe I've uncovered a secret. Good, thanks. Maybe it's like Tom Riddle's diary, and I'm about to have a flashback about Tom Riddle abusing Hagrid. I can't remember how the flashback went, but back to this. So this paper texture, quite nice. I would say a little bit of bump. Paper does have a slight bump, especially old paper. If you could have some light coming through the paper, that would be crazy, but that's a little bit of subsurf and that's pushing it a bit. But yeah, definitely think some lighting that's less uniform. The lighting catches this page very evenly. Would be nice if there was like a bright area with some light fall off. So light fall off is always cool. Have this area a bit darker over here, but all of that could be quite nice. I think that it's awesome though, like in terms of dynamics and the attention to detail, texturing, all looks awesome. Beautiful entry by Cohort. Oh, this is Tanita. Early. Wow, first entry in this forum is from Tanita. Tanita's usually like the last entry. Good to see an early entry. I like this one. Very nice. RGB kites sort of just chilling. Very cool. Ah, this entry from Kagla C. This could be so good. So the movement is a little bit chopped. Oh, actually, I'm not sure. It might not even be that. Like, the movement might be good. It's tricky. Like, it also depends on what sort of scene they were going for, but I think they need some sort of violence in the atmosphere. It feels gentle despite the movement, if that makes sense. But yeah, I wish I could give some better feedback, because this does look very good. The movement just seems a little bit almost robotic. But, oh man, this could be so nice. Sorry I can't give better feedback. I do like this entry a lot, though. This one from Burke Edach is quite cool. So they have these curves that hit the invisible collider and reveal the word wind. Now, the only thing that I would have liked to have seen on this is if these curves were actually vellum driven. So think like colorful spaghetti, and they sort of smashing into this wind thing. I think that could look so good. All right, so you just have like a basic pop wind driving it, and you push it this way towards this wind word. They kind of just go in between the grooves and stuff. I think that could be sick. This is interesting. It does look more like motion graphics rather than, 3D sort of graphics. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. The sort of turbulent motion is nice. I don't really know how you can improve this. So once again, sorry about that. But maybe if you had to put a bit of a background or something, it would change it up a bit, or even give these sort of curves a bit of thickness. All of those things could make it a bit more interesting, but I think it is very cool. A person I haven't seen in the forum before, Langua. And they have these elements busy flying around like this. Looks good. Each one of these has some sort of dynamic movement to it, and I think that that's pretty cool. Some of them look like vellum. Actually, all of it looks like vellum, but I think there are some more rigid bodies involved. Like, that's probably just the collider that's been animated. I do like the color scheme that they've gone for. What I would like to see is some more subdivided geometry. You can see that a lot of the geometry is kind of faceted. Where did I notice it? So you can notice it a bit on the sphere, on that over there, even on this sort of floppy gold thing over here. Yeah, I know the kind of style that they're going for, and so I think that they also need to work on lighting slightly. This over here, they try to use opacity. It's tricky with fabrics. So if you're going to use opacity on fabrics, you should drive your opacity by like a weave texture. So just go to like, I don't know, textures.com. They probably have some good ones. Get a weave texture and then drive your opacity by it. Very cool, right? Then you have sort of transparent areas in between the weave and it's realistic. This sort of thing can look kind of fake because all of the other elements look fairly good, but the cloth looks a bit off. So maybe that's the small piece of advice I can give here. Drasko Ivashik has this, what did he say it was? These absinthe gummy bears. Am I imagining? Did I make that up? I don't think it was asbestos that he said. I think he said absinthe. Might be wrong though. But if, yeah, absinthe gummy bear hanging onto the beware wind pole. It's nice. I like that he's got soft body dynamics that are affected by wind that isn't cloth. I think that's pretty cool. Nice entry from Drasko Ivashik. This is cool from NQ. The movement in this is very interesting. The fact that it's all kind of offset. I don't actually know if this is dynamics or animation driven, but it's very cool. Like that a lot. Good variation, good use of the geometry multiple times over, but sort of varying where they appear. So there's no noticeable pattern. I think that's pretty cool. Interesting floor choice. I like that these are just sort of attached to these straws. Good detail on things. I like that one. Ah, yes. So this is some VDB point advection. This is what I was talking about earlier with that cliff. If you advect actual particles, they follow the motion of smoke, even though it's not smoke. And so you can do some cool stuff with that by making it look like this, you know, actual snow particles. But that's from Aslak KS. And yeah, they said starting to like VDB advect points. It is cool. You can do some cool stuff with it. Just want to bring this one up from Aspen XL. Good movement, good color scheme, nice camera move. Just thought I would quickly say that. Just credit where credit's due. I think this one from Abe High is great, right? They have the leaf blower coming past. You know, this infuriates me. I am infuriated. There's a guy, a leaf blower man, who every morning, sorry, excuse the hard he does, every morning would bring a leaf blower. There's no leaves on the street, not a single leaf. And he would switch on his leaf blower and he would just blow the road. He would just use his leaf blower on the road. There's no leaves. And he would do it for like an hour. He would ruin your sleep and then he'd be gone. It's like not all heroes wear capes. Not all villains kill people. Some of them just ruin your sleep. That man was a leaf blower wielding lunatic. I don't know where he is now. Haven't heard him in a while. Maybe he's moved on to drier pastures. Ah, cool simulation. It's a really nice simulation. I'm just very confused about the render that I'm looking at. It's like, is it viewport? But everything about this is really cool, but like the camera move and that, I find it really interesting. I just don't know what I'm actually looking at, like in terms of rendering. But yeah, of course, this one could be improved by just straight render quality. Oh, I use MoGraph. Okay, I see. Yeah, this one, great movement. I think it could just be rendered in a more realistic way or a more artistic way. It just feels like it's lacking a little bit of impact because the camera move and movement of everything, like the dynamics, is so good. It just falls a little bit short, I think, in the actual sort of aesthetic or visual department. But yeah, I think it's still splendid from Organic Computer. So I'm dropping a like just because of the Avatar reference. The show is too good. Like, I'm an adult now. This is still one of the best shows I've ever watched. I loved it. So good. Lucas Romney with the dandelion. That's quite nice. Sort of explodes out like that. I see Lucas venturing into some colors and things. A little bit of lighting. Cool stuff. This entry from Mumu, they have sort of wind picking up particles off of these planes. So, I'm just going to give quick advice on this one. If you're doing the sort of thing where you have particles moving in sort of a distance, and you can get away with them sort of being viewed as a volume, then try to use a volume either as well or just the volume. Because particles, they're always going to give you the sort of empty feel, right? It doesn't feel like they're actually coming off of the environment. Because when wind blows, it'll pick up, you know, millions of particles. And so this just doesn't cut it. You either have to do really high resolution simulation or do VDB stuff. That's the other option. So if you're going to do stuff like this where there's technically millions of particles being picked up, try to do one of three things: particles and a volume, just a volume, or extremely high resolution particles. Like, those are your three options basically. Your other option is to do something like PGen, I suppose, where you have some particles and then you generate like 5 particles per particle and you generate them sort of in a sphere around each particle. That gives you a bit more like volume in your particles. But yeah, that's just some advice on particles, because particles aren't used alone as often as you'd think. If they are, then they're not just sort of rendered as particles, but particles aren't often rendered at the scale. So yeah, that's just a little bit of advice on particles. But yeah, that's it for this video. I will be back tomorrow. There's only 2 videos left. How crazy is that? And then I'm just going to do a quick review video of the top entries. I think that'll be nice. Also give some shout outs to all of the people, you know, along the way. It'll be a nice end, a bit of a goodbye to Mardini. So yeah, in 3 days time, you know, my Mardini journey will end, and we can all be happy knowing that we did our best and we earned Mardini shirts. Also, try not to pester side effects about the shirts. I remember last year I sent them a message. I'm like, where's my shirt? I want my shirt. And it was kind of, it takes a while. They have to first source all of the shirts and that, and then sort out all of the people that they're sending it to. And with COVID and stuff, there's still regulations in place. So just give it some time. It might take a little while. So yeah, you know, they do deliver all their things. I got all of my prizes last year. So if you are expecting a prize, you will get it. But yeah, I've gone off on a tangent again. So I shall end this video before I go off even further. See you tomorrow. Bye.